really nervous. All right, whatever. Let's just do it. What's up, everybody? Welcome. I'm doing it. I am finally doing it. Let's mark the day. It's November 23rd, 2019, and I am officially a decade late, or almost a decade late to podcasting. But hey, it's better late than never, right? Wow, this is so cool. Okay, well, I guess to start off, I am your host, Brett Sidney. Yeah, what's up? This is the Tiny Raincoat Podcast. You know, I was going back and forth on one or two names, but I really like this name, and I'm going to roll with it. But yeah, so I reached out on Twitter maybe 1 or 2 weeks ago, and just to kind of see if people would be interested in being on a podcast that I started or maybe listening to one. And a lot of people seem interested, which is really cool and supportive, and that means a lot to me. So here we are. I don't know. I think the reason why I really wanted to start this is just to talk with friends and people that influence me about why they do what they do and why they're so passionate and all the things that drives them to make them keep doing that. And I think this will be a great opportunity for me to learn not only about like music things, but just kind of anything that my friends are into. And I think that would be not only beneficial for me, but anyone who listens to this, maybe one person, maybe 10 people, I don't know how many will, but in honor of episode 1, I have pretty much my neighbor as my first guest. Her name is Mewborn. She is an incredible Atlanta-based photographer, videographer. She does portraits. She's a touring photographer. She does so many cool things, so much great work. And I just really wanted to talk to her about that and what drives her. So, yeah, I hope you guys enjoy. How was the drive over here?
Dude, such a long drive. It was fun. Yeah. It was crazy.
I heard you almost hit a deer.
Yeah, there was a deer in the road. You know, that 4-minute commute from my house to your house, man. It was crazy. It took at least 6 minutes.
Did you see them setting up that big event over at Dry County?
Yeah. Do they do that for games?
I know there's a game today, but I think they're doing like a brews and like some event over there.
Somebody was loading up it looked like a PA and some stuff out there. And they were selling like merch or something. There was hats and shit.
Really?
Like they had like Falcons gear set up and other NFL stuff set up
for the Falcons game.
It might be like an NFL tailgate kind of thing.
That'd be dope.
That's kind of cool.
Wait, why are we doing this? We should go over there.
I'm saying we should probably just cancel.
Cancel episode 1. It's not working.
It's done. We're done. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for having me. Okay, so if I had to describe you, I would say you're like a double-edged sword in terms of like content creating. You know what I mean? You do incredible work like with photography and videography, but then also like the other aspect is editing. Mm-hmm. Like I kind of dabble around in live pictures, or I used to, I guess, but editing is hard. Like for live shots.
Yeah.
That is insane.
That's like the majority of my work.
Really?
Is editing. Like taking the photo when I'm doing live photo is like the smallest portion of what it entails, really. Because y'all spend like a couple hours editing just to get the lighting right. If I want to do stuff on top of just like lighting manipulation, like mirroring or taking stuff out of photos, adding stuff to photos, like getting into Photoshop and stuff, that's even more like time consuming, more editing.
What's like the process? So you take the photo and post, do you go to Lightroom first or do you go to Photoshop first?
Yeah, so usually I'll get all the files and I like separate everything and put it into Lightroom, into each like different catalog from what I'm working on. Yeah. And because everything I shoot, you shoot in RAW, so that way you can manipulate the light how you want to. And depending what I want with the photo, like the Stay Here promos that we posted the other day, I don't know if you can notice, but the album artwork is actually overlaid on the one that I posted in the alley.
On the promos?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
The album artwork is overlaid. That one that's of them in the alley in Macon. Mm-hmm. So with that one in particular, we took those portraits in Macon before that Halloween show. Yeah. And I put all those photos into Lightroom, edited them, and kind of start out which ones I wanted to do more conceptual stuff with. Right. And so with that one, after I finished everything in Lightroom, which I tweaked like my presets for that a good bit, probably took me like an hour and a half to find the coloring combination with like the tones and everything I was comfortable with. Yeah. And then I moved it into Photoshop. Okay. And then put all the overlays and all the masking and all that stuff in, which was then like another hour and a half there.
Wait, so you have like your collection of photos that you want to use, and then So you edit your preset, and then do you put the preset in all those images, or do you kind of tweak them? Put the preset
I'll put it on there and then tweak it because you know I use mostly natural lighting with those.
Yeah.
So you know the sun moves one inch the other way, the lighting's a little different, or I move the camera just a little bit and the shadows are different. So stuff like that. So you tweak it a little bit, but it's the same kind of base preset, and then I just tweak to fit that particular image.
Do you make your own presets or?
Yeah, I've like tried to use other people's presets, and I don't know. I always end up changing them so drastically. I'm just like, I might as well just fucking do my own.
Yeah. Have you ever, because like I've noticed like with your photography, you have a very distinct style. Have you ever thought about like doing
thank you.
Like your own like preset pack or something? That'd be crazy.
Dude, part of me has thought about that, but then a larger part of me has like vetoed that in my head because I don't know necessarily how to make like specific presets that could be used generically.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like when I do a preset for like anything for live stuff, sometimes I'll start with a foundational preset that, you know, maybe I've shot at the same venue before and the lighting looks similar. So I'll open it, but then I tweak it so much. So it's rare that I like have a preset of mine that I can just put on and not make a lot of adjustments. Right. So I don't know how to make a generic preset that you could just throw on and maybe tweak a little and it would work. I probably could do it for portraits maybe.
Maybe for portraits, but like live photos, there's so much that goes into it.
Yeah, it's like I don't know how to make something generic enough that I could shoot at the Masquerade and then go use it when I shoot at like a venue in LA or something.
Because I guess venues, the lighting is so different from venue to venue.
Yeah, it's so different. Yeah. And like my settings on my camera would be different probably. Yeah. You know, some venues I use a flash, other venues I don't. And like that's just my kind of flow. Yeah. If another photographer were to buy it and then, you know, their settings are completely different, they shoot completely different than me, they put it on, they're like, what the fuck, I paid $5 for this preset and it doesn't work. I'm like, shit, I don't know, man. I don't know. Yeah. So that's like why I've always talked myself out of it. Because I don't want to give this idea that like you can just put it on and it looks like my stuff and then people are mad that it doesn't or whatever, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, so you said you do like portraits and stuff. What do you like better, like live photos or portraits or?
I always go back and forth. I really live portraits. Live music will always be my favorite. I think that one. I'm just more passionate about it, especially because I work in the genre of music that I actually listen to and I really really love. Like a lot of artists that I shoot for or work with are artists that I listen to regularly. Right. So that's
kind of crazy too. That whole concept insane, of like shooting people like. Because when we do Toast and Jam sessions, sometimes we'll have like, we had Bearings on, we had like Have Mercy. Like I listen to those bands and like when I'm shooting them, I'm like, wait, this is crazy. What am I doing here? It's weird. So it's kind of the same thing for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like working with bands that I listen to and actually getting to meet the people that, you know, write the music that influences my life in some sort of way is cool. Yeah. So I think that's why music will always be my favorite thing to shoot. And it's like any aspect of music. Shows are my favorite. I definitely say shows are my favorite just because I'm at a show. You know, that's cool that I get to document something I would have gone to regardless of my camera. But then anything under the blanket, like sessions are really cool. Yeah. Recording is really cool. Like going into the studio and doing documentary style stuff when people are recording is really, really cool to get the emotion.
And it's cool because like with music, there's a lot of passion in it. And it's awesome to be able to capture that and share that with everyone.
Exactly. Yeah. With portraits, it's cool because I get to kind of, you know, it's a different type of workflow. It's a different kind of shoot. I do different settings. I use different lenses. I do different angles. I have more control of my subject and actually get to do things like pose them and stage them and, you know, tell them where to put their limbs. Is it
kind of like polar opposites? Portraits and live music?
Yeah, for sure. Because like with live music, I can't say anything. I just got to take a picture of what you're already doing. Yeah. But with portraits, I can be like, no, don't stand like that. You look weird.
Yeah. I guess like live music is whatever happens. And like whatever you get with portraits, you kind of have more control, I guess.
Yeah,
with
exactly.
Locations and poses and whatnot.
Yeah, especially if you do like studio stuff, then you're controlling everything. You're controlling your lights, you're controlling your backdrop, you're controlling your camera settings, your, you know, subject, how they're going to pose, things like that.
Have you shot weddings or anything before?
I've shot a couple of weddings. I've second shot a couple and I've like primary shot a couple and they're cool. They're so stressful. Yeah. They're so like, I have a lot of friends that do it and they meet some really, really great couples, but then there's also the off chance that you would get a crazy couple.
The diva.
Yeah. And then it's just this awful, stressful experience. Cause with weddings, it's different than a show. Cause like, you know, if you don't get that great of photos at a show, you know, at least there's always the next show.
Right.
Or the wedding, if you miss like the big moments at a wedding, you know,
there's not another wedding.
There's not another way to get it, you know? And like, you get hired for your style on stuff like that, but then there's also like a pushback sometimes if they don't like how you edit, and it's like, well, why did you hire me in the first place? And
well, so what do you do in that situation if they don't?
Usually, I mean, I tailor as much as I can to what they want, but then I also say like, you know, that's part of the reason why you hired me is more than to just like push the button to get the photo. So do you want my influence on these photos, or do you just want something that would look generic in a wedding magazine? You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's always kind of weird. But it's cool. I've met some really cool couples out of it, and I've done a lot of more of like engagement shoot stuff and stuff like that, which are cool. It's just way more stress. Yeah. There's more money involved, but there's so much stress. And with stuff like that, when I do weddings, it feels like I'm doing it for the money, not because I'm doing it because I want to do it. It's like, oh, I wanted to get $2,000 to shoot this wedding, or you know, whatever it is. But it's not like I love shooting weddings. That's what I want to do. Yeah. You know.
So the passion's in the music, but like
the money's in the other ones. Yeah.
Okay, so I know with music, there's a lot of proper etiquettes with playing shows and stuff. Are there like any etiquettes that you have to follow, like when you're doing photography or anything?
Oh yeah.
Or at least for live music, a main etiquette is to like get your shit off stage right away so the other band could play. Like keeping your sets 25, 30 minutes. Anything longer than that's kind of like, okay,
you should be headlining.
It's time for you to be done.
Yeah.
But is there anything like that for photography?
Yeah, the photography community, especially just in general, but especially in music, is so weird.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of cool people in it.
Is it competitive? Is it more competitive?
It depends on who you're in the pit with.
Gotcha.
Because like some photographers, they get in and they just have this ego. They think they're better than everybody. Their mindset, especially it happens with like photographers that are actually on the tour versus like shooting a local date. It's like if they don't know you, they're just going to brush right over you. They're going to give you really weird vibes. They're going to just act like they're better than you, which it hasn't happened as much lately, and like the more that I've gotten involved. But I remember when I was first starting out, like how intimidating it was to be in a pit with, you know, the touring photographer. Because I mean, at the end of the day, that space is small and you want to respect who's in that space with you. But like some people just give you weird vibes, you know? So that's the only really kind of thing. You just need a more sense of awareness because you don't have a lot of space to be getting around. There's only, when you're not on the tour and you're shooting from the pit of just a normal stage, you're only going to get 3 songs. So you get the first 3 songs, and then unless you have a tour pass or like all access, you have to move. You have to get out of that pit, and you can shoot from the crowd, or if you have credentials, you can shoot side stage and stuff like that. But you only get those first 3 songs, and so does everybody that's in that pit with you at that time, except for maybe a touring photographer.
Wait, so they don't like stagger it? It's all like every photographer.
3. Oh wow! After the 3rd song, you can't come back in unless you have a pass or all access. Yeah. So you only have like maybe 15 minutes to get your shots.
Oh wow!
At most instances, unless you're on the tour. And so you definitely being mindful of everyone around you is one thing that's part of the etiquette. And like little things like, you don't really want to stand too close to the stage because then you're in other people's shots. You don't really want to hold your camera up high because then you're blocking other people's shots. Yeah. You don't want to just like blindly stare through your camera and just jump in front of someone. And like all the etiquette involves in being completely aware of your surroundings and who's in the pit with you. Right. And it's like, when you don't have that, it's just awkward for the people around you. Yeah. So that's really the only sense of etiquette, is just having a really high sense of awareness and trying to be inclusive of people. Some photographers are so closed-minded and they don't want to be helpful. And, you could ask them questions like, what body are you shooting with, or what are your settings at, or this, that, and the other. And some photographers will be nice and they'll tell you and you'll talk about it and you'll, geek out over camera gear for a little bit or whatever. And some of them will be like, I'm not telling you that. You don't need to know what I'm shooting in. Like, do your own job or whatever. And they'll be little pricks about it, you know?
It's kind of annoying.
It's annoying. It is annoying. So it just depends who you're in the pit with, whether you're in the pit with cool people, which like in Atlanta, we have a really good scene of local photographers. We all get along really well. We all work with each other really well. Yeah. We respect each other, and that's really cool. But I've definitely gone in like other cities, and there's been photographers in the pit, even to me, like when I'm on the tour, that are just assholes to me and just brush me off and just, make me want to
at least your work speaks for itself,
Hey, thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so in terms of like touring and stuff, because I know like we were just talking about touring and touring photographers, what are some like cool big tours you've done? Because I know recently you did the Trash Talk tour, right?
The Trash Boat, yeah.
Boat tour.
So I was on that tour with Sleep on It, and I ended up, so it was Don Broca was the headliner, Trash Boat was direct, Sleep on It was 2, and then Selfish Things was first. And I went out with Sleep on It, and they are great group of guys. Like everyone in our camp was awesome. We got along really well. Like we vibed really well. They were very welcoming, very like inclusive. It wasn't one of those situations where it's like you act one type of way and then you get in the van and it's like, God damn it, I hate this. I want to go home.
I have 2 more weeks with these people.
Yeah, exactly. Like I hate all of you. Like fuck off. So it definitely wasn't that, which was cool. They were a really good group of guys. We got along. We laughed all the time. Like we all had kind of similar interests. We ate really good food. Shout out to them for always wanting to eat ramen and sushi. Love ramen and sushi, especially on tour. And then I ended up befriending, pretty much everyone on that tour got along really, really well. We spent a lot of our off days together and stuff. And then I got really close with some of the guys in Trash Boat. Shout out James, shout out Oakley, shout out Squad.
Shout out.
But they were really welcoming. I ended up shooting for them like a couple of times just because they're just great people. They're really great people. They had really great crowd interaction every single night. Their music is awesome. Like they're just nice guys, and we just all got along really, really well.
So how does that like work? Because you get hired on by one band, and then you just kind of like shoot the whole tour?
Yeah. So when I was with Sleep On It, I was pretty much responsible for all their content for that tour. So I was doing their photos. I was doing recap videos for them weekly. I think maybe bi-weekly, like one time. And doing stuff like that for them. So predominantly they were my priority over everyone because that's who I went out with. That's who brought me there. That's who I, owed the opportunity to. They were my priority. Yeah. Sleep On It was my first priority. And then like the more and more I started hanging out with Trash Boat guys, I was like, I should just like shoot their set. Like they're homies, they're cool dudes. I just want to shoot their set. So I didn't shoot their set like every night. I probably shot like, I think 3 or 4 of their sets. Because they actually joined us like 6 days into the tour, or 5 days into the tour, because they were finishing some headlining shows back home. They're from the UK, so they were finishing those, I think, and then they came over and joined us. And then I shot them for the first time in like somewhere on the West Coast, I think. Yeah. And then I was like, damn, their sets are so fun. I just want to keep shooting their sets.
Wait, so how do you even get the opportunity? Is it from like them noticing you on social media, or you just shoot them one time?
No,
and
like
then
the first time I shot them, it was definitely San Francisco. Yeah. And they were in the green room before their set, and like Sleep On It had just finished, and I had came downstairs and I was like putting on my camera away, and I was like, dang, like that's a really good venue. The lighting was really good. It was the best venue we'd had in a minute. Like it was a Great American Music Hall in San Francisco. It's kind of like a mini Tabernacle.
Dude,
super nice.
Tabernacle. Oh,
super nice. Super ideal. Old, really characteristic, balcony up top, big stage, had a pit. A lot of the venues that we had been at previous didn't have a photo pit. So like I actually had room to
pit
work.
Is like between the barricade and the stage. Okay.
So, which I get from a crowd's perspective why those suck, because you want to be interactive with the fans, but that's essentially my office when I'm shooting. Right. So when that's gone and I have to shoot from the crowd, it makes it harder because people get pissed off, and I don't want to interrupt their experience because they're there to see the show, but people are mad. People have pushed me. People have tried to take my gear off of me. Like people have shoved me. They've yelled at me. Wow. People can be assholes, which is rightfully so. They're paying, $30, whatever, for a ticket. They don't want to be interrupted by some kid with a camera. Yeah. And I get that. But that venue in particular, when we went, was sick because it had a balcony or a pit, and I hadn't had that in a long time.
Well, and that's weird. Like if people get mad at you, 'cause like if you look around during a concert, everyone has their phone up. So what's the difference between? It's like a stigma around like get this photographer out of here.
Yeah, but I guess people have this concept that I have somewhere else that I can go.
But you don't.
But I don't. I don't know. I don't know what it is. Like there are certain markets, you hit and people are super supportive and they're like, yeah, girl, you're working. Just go ahead. You're good. And then there are places like in LA when I was trying to shoot from the crowd because there wasn't a pit there. And, like a group of girls were just like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, why are you're in our way. We can't fucking see anything. And literally all I was doing was sliding by. My camera wasn't even up. I was like arms down, sliding through the crowd. And they're like, what the fuck? When I pulled my camera out, they're like, what the fuck are you doing? And I was like, listen, I'm going to be here for like one song at most, and then I'm gonna move. Yeah. And they're like, this is ridiculous. And I'm like, I don't have anywhere else to go. What am I like? Where am I supposed to go from here? Like, I can't just shoot behind the drum kit all night. I'm not gonna get any shots. Right. So some people are cool about it. Some people are not cool about it. But that venue was when I first shot Trash Boat. I'm pretty sure it was that one. And like Sleep On It finished, and I kind of was just in a mindset that I didn't want to be done shooting. Like I wanted to shoot more, and the crowd was good, the venue was good. And I had been wanting to shoot them anyway, but all the venues previously were like didn't have barricades, didn't have the best lighting, and things like that. So I was like, now would be a good night to shoot them for the first time. And then I was like, hey, do you guys care if I just shoot your set? And they're like, no, we'd love that. Please do that. Yeah, like, thanks.
Is that like the goal to like tour and take pictures more?
Yeah. the goal is definitely to be touring a lot more.
Yeah.
Like ideally I would like to be touring for at least 6 months out of the year.
Yeah.
If not more, but at least 6 months, and it doesn't necessarily have to be all at one time. It could be, a month here, 2 months there, a month there, whatever. I just want to be going out periodically throughout the year instead of just going through like what I did this year, where I was gone in February and March, and then I was home all the way until September, October again, which sucked because it's like I did a couple weekenders here and there, but it wasn't really enough of a outing to be considered doing it. You know what I mean? It was just 3 days in Florida or, North Carolina or wherever the surrounding areas we hit are.
Yeah.
So I've only been doing it for like 2 years is when I started touring. I did my first tour with a band called As Animals Eat My Insides.
Dude.
Shout out them.
Oh my gosh.
Shout out them.
Yo, they used to live, when I lived in Woodstock, they lived like the street behind me.
Yeah, they still live in Woodstock. They live in a different house though.
Oh wow.
Yeah. But they did live up in that one over by like
it's in like they used to I don't know if I should say this on podcast, but
we're talking about the same place. Yeah, we probably shouldn't say this on podcast. I forgot about that.
That's crazy.
That was my first tour. I was still in college at the time. That was my first semester of my senior year. So this was like 2017. Wow. Yeah. And it was like they went with this band called the Bunny the Bear.
I remember that tour.
I know,
that's crazy.
Yeah. So that was my first tour. It was so funny. It was such a cool tour. It was just a cool experience. And that was my first one. And then I finished school. And then that summer was when I really started touring. So really, it's only been about a year that I've like actually been trying to pursue it.
Yeah.
But I started touring about a year and a half, 2 years ago.
So like, what are the benefits from going on tour? Because you could just take infinite amount of shots at shows in Atlanta, but like, is there sort of stuff that makes it more worth going out on the road or something?
Yeah. One is traveling. Like I don't have to pay at all to go to these places. Like I've seen before I started touring, the only places I had been to outside of Georgia were like the surrounding southern areas.
Yeah.
I'd been to North Carolina, I'd been to South Carolina, I'd been to Tennessee, I'd been to Florida and Alabama. That was like the extent of my traveling.
Yeah.
And now I've been to like almost every state in the country.
That is dope.
Just from touring.
Yeah.
And like I don't have to buy a plane ticket. I don't have to drive my car. I don't have to pay for gas. Like I don't have to do any of those things in order to do it. So that to me is the biggest plus. It's just traveling. Like I've gone to California 3 times in the past year. And before last summer, I had never been to California in my life.
And all thanks to touring.
All of touring. Yeah. So it's cool. That is the highlight of it for me for sure. But then it's also the people. I have been fortunate to not really meet any terribly awful people on the road.
Yeah.
And I've made a lot of really, really good friends out of it. People that I care about a lot. People that, support me and what I'm trying to do. And I mutually support them and what they're trying to do, which is really, really cool to have friends who understand what you're doing instead of like people in the real world that kind of don't get what you're going after. Yeah. And they're like, dude, that's sick. You're going after that. Do it.
For sure.
So it's cool to have friends that are similar mindset, similar interested, and kind of push you to do what you want to do instead of talk you out of it. And that part's really, really cool. And just, it's more of like a challenge. Shooting from home all the time, you just kind of get comfortable because I know the lighting at the Masquerade. I know the staff at the Masquerade. I know what to expect of every show at every different stage at the Masquerade because I've done it so many times. But touring is like, it's challenging because you're walking into a different venue with different lighting, different sound, different setup every single day, and you have a couple hours to figure out where your angles are going to be and where your vantage points are going to be, and then you just go. Yeah. So that's cool. And like seeing, different spots, different venues, and learning that part. You learn a lot about like the industry and how things work at shows. It's not just like, oh, doors are at 6, let's fuck around. You know what I mean? Right. Like you see all the behind the scenes stuff and you learn a lot more about the industry, which is really, really cool. And I get to see a lot of people that I wouldn't normally see, like people that I follow on social media I've gotten to meet. Like I've gotten to meet a lot of my like photographer friends from all over the place. Like I got to meet a really good friend of mine, Omar. Shout out Omar in Canada. Woo! I got to meet him in Canada. I went to Canada for the first time on the Broco tour. And I got to meet him, and he's always been a really, really cool dude. I got to meet a friend of mine named Raquel. She's from like Massachusetts, Northeastern. She always goes everywhere in Northeast, but she was in Canada too at that time. So I got to meet her. And like, it's cool meeting people that I only ever talked to on the internet. I met my friend Rosario in Chicago. Like, it's just cool to meet people that I otherwise would have had no way of meeting them. Yeah. So that's cool.
What made you start wanting to shoot? Was it like one day you saw like a camera or something?
Kind of, honestly. So I kind of always shot when I was younger. My best friend Madison and I used to shoot like all the time together because we lived out we lived outside of Athens. We grew up outside Athens.
Yeah.
And it's a super kind of rural area, a lot of woods. We used to just go out in the woods with like my little point and shoot camera all the time. And I would take portraits of her, and I would take like nature photos of leaves and trees, and just be super, probably just basic, but whatever. And I was super into that for a while. And then, school started getting harder, and I started doing sports, and I started doing chorus and theater, and like other avenues were taking my attention away from photography. So I kind of took a break. And then when I went to college, I originally went to college with the mindset that I wanted to do website development and build websites and learn to code. Because I was one of those kids in middle school and high school that like charge people $20 to do their MySpace layout.
Oh yeah.
Or their Tumblr layout. If you ever had a Tumblr.
I did.
Yep. I was one of those people that's like, yo, $20, I'll give you a custom Tumblr layout and banner. Do a little Photoshop banner. Yeah, that was me. So I wanted to do that. I wanted to do web development. Yeah. And this was like the same time period that Squarespace was taking off, and all these other like certain like engines of web development were popping off, and I was like, okay, well, there goes that career. Like that's just dead. $6 a month, you get your own website. Who cares? Yeah. So then I switched over to graphic design, because I was like, this is kind of what I want to do. It's similar concept. I'm laying things out, designing things. Because for a long time I wanted to do interior design. Talked myself out of it because I didn't think it was a profitable career. Yeah. Still watch HGTV all the time.
Always. Property Brothers?
Dude, I love Property Brothers. Fixer Upper. Love it or list it. These are the classics. And so I switched to graphic design, and I switched to graphic communications after that, which was like a communications graphic design hybrid, basically. And in that, I ended up having to take photography classes, and I started with film classes. So like I knew a little bit growing up about the fundamentals, and not a lot. It's just like I'm taking a picture, I'm putting it on auto, and this is
hoping
what it is. Hoping for the best. Yeah. So then I started taking film classes, and I'm like, oh, I actually understand how this works now. I get what the point of all these different settings are and these configurations and what they're going to do to my photo. And then the more film classes I took like 2 or 3, and I had a professor named Brett.
Oh,
Brett. Shout out Brett. His last name's Mullinex, but he was Brett. We just called him by his first name. Yeah. We didn't use last names for art professors. We don't do that. And he always kind of pushed me to think creatively in photos, more so than just taking a photo. Like he pushed me to think about, the composition, the framing, the more than just the point and shoot for the best, So in that, I found kind of like a love for actually creating an image. And this was the same time period that I started going to shows a lot more, because I lived so much closer to the city. Yeah. And so I was going to shows all the time with my friends from school, and I was heavily getting into photography. And then I remember going to a show at the Old Masquerade, RIP 695. At the Old Mask, it was...
Those were the golden years.
Yeah, those were the golden years. It was The Word Alive was playing.
Wow. Was that when Luke Holland was still the drummer?
Luke Holland was still in the drummer. This was like, I think right when that Dark Matter album came out, or was about to come out. Yeah. And that show had been mismarked and was marked as sold out, but it wasn't sold out. So nobody bought tickets. I felt so bad for the band. There was like nobody there, which was crazy, because Word Alive at that point in time was like massive, easily selling out that venue. So it was a pretty small crowd. There was like maybe 200 of us in heaven at the Old Mask. In heaven. Wow. Yeah, it's crazy. But I remember seeing their photographer at the time. I'm assuming it was Vince. He's like been their guy for a minute. But I saw him doing the thing, and I was like, damn, I've been getting into photography. Like, I like coming to shows. This is kind of a cool concept. And that week I had like 3 shows I was already going to anyway. So I went to that Word Alive show, and then like, jokingly, I went to the Fetty Wap show the next day. Oh, like obviously didn't shoot that. I just went because I wanted to hear 1738, because this was that time period. It was big then. I was like, I want to see Fetty Wap. Why not? Tickets were $40, whatever. And then the next day was Secrets. You know that band, Secrets?
I used to listen to them all the time.
I love that band.
Well, you shot them a couple times, like recently, right?
Yeah. That was the first show. Crazy backstory. First show I went to when I started getting into going to shows again was the Zombie 5 tour. It was Devil Wears Prada, Word Alive, Motionless in White, and Secrets.
Wow. What a tour. Especially, what year was it? Like
2014? 2014, 2015?
Wow.
Yeah.
That was like prime metalcore.
Oh my God, yeah. It was right when that Zombie EP came out for Devil Wears Prada.
That was 2015?
I think so. 2015.
Wow.
Because it was like the winter time. Yeah. Or maybe 2016. Maybe. Something like that. Yeah. It was at the Old Mask. And I was like, I didn't know any of these bands really. I knew the word Alive, and that was pretty much it. I didn't know any of those bands because I was kind of just reaching into that like heavier concept.
Right. Yeah.
I remember meeting them, and then that's how I found out about Secrets, and I followed them from then, which is crazy now because like now they're friends of mine, and they're friends of Kevin's, and they're like homies. So it's weird that.
That's so cool, though.
Evolved to that.
For sure.
But I love that band. And I was at their headlining tour for the Everything That Got Us Here album cycle. They were playing at the Old Hell, the old Masquerade. Yeah. And I was like, Hell doesn't have a photo policy. Masquerade doesn't have a photo policy. Whatever. I'll just bring my camera. So I brought my camera to that show and I shot, and I was like, this is the coolest feeling ever. Like, this is so cool to do something like this. Granted, at the time, I really didn't know about show photography. I was not shooting in RAW. I had a shitty little $400 camera. Shout out Canon Rebel T5. And I was just kind of trying to do it. And I edited in Photoshop RAW eventually. Yeah. And like, kind of figured it out from there. But it was just the feeling of like, holy crap, like I'm at a show for a band I love and I'm taking photos of it that I get to remember and, other people get to remember. Yeah. And so that's kind of how I got started with that. And then I took it to the Old Mask every time I went there because there was no policy at all. So I could just walk in with my camera.
Anyone could just walk in with a camera?
Anybody could walk in with a camera. It didn't matter at the Old Mask. Like, they didn't care about stuff like that. That was before, the world got super... fucked up at shows and they had to start searching you know? So then you could just bring your camera. Even it was a DSLR, my lens detached. They didn't care.
Actually, didn't the Old Heaven, it had like a photo pit. Oh my gosh.
It was like a pitiful little pit. Yeah. It was maybe like a half a foot of room. That barricade was so close to that stage. As a fan, that's sick. Yeah. But when you're trying to shoot, that's pretty much a non-usable pit.
I remember I shot, because I've never really done like show photography, but I've done one show and I shot at the Old Heaven, State Shams, and Neck Deep, Knuckle Puck. And that was like, I've never really shot, because I'm doing like what you were saying, like I'm putting it on auto and I'm hoping for the best. Yeah. And then I remember Knuckle Puck was playing and I put flash on. Oh. And then I took one picture and then the security guy was like, no flash. I was like, oh my God, I should not be here. What am I doing here? I barely even know how to turn my camera on. But no,
that goes into one of those etiquette things. Yes, I guess that's kind of one of those unspoken rules people know, unless it's like a little DIY venue, not to really use flash. Yeah. So to reiterate back to that, that's hilarious.
No
that's
flash.
Sick you shot that show though.
But I got like one good photo the whole night, and it was of Knuckle Puck, and it was when I used to flash because I didn't know how to like adjust my settings to get like and then also, to be fair, I don't know how to edit live shots, so I think the flash kind of saved me. But
that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
The shows are like a different ball game shooting. They're weird. Like now that I've done so many, I kind of know my general area of settings on my camera when I shoot a show. But in the beginning, I was like, how do I make these different things line up to actually expose what is happening in front of me? Yeah. Especially when the lights are changing all the time. Some venues have really god-awful lights. Some venues have sick lights. Like, it's all over the place.
What makes you feel nervous? Or like, you go into like a shooting situation, you're like, I don't know what to do here. Are there like situations you get there?
Yeah. It was weird. Like the first day of the Broco tour, I felt like that. I was like trying to hide it because I didn't want anyone to know that I felt super out of my element. Just because like that was... I mean, arguably the Broco tour is the biggest tour I've done. Yeah. Like, that's the most successful tour I've done. 90% of those shows were sold out. Only 6 of them didn't sell out.
That's insane.
Like, those are the biggest artists that I've toured with at the time. Like, that was like a step, like a milestone in my thing. Because the Can't Swim tour, while it was absolutely incredible, is a fantastic tour. I mean, it was a smaller scale. Like, our venues, the biggest venue we played, I think, was maybe like 400 cap. Yeah. And the Broco tour we played, the biggest venue was in Chicago, it was 800 cap venue. So it's just a bigger scale. Everything was bigger. Yeah. And the first 4 or 5 shows of the Broco tour were sold out in a row. Yeah. So I didn't know anybody.
Is that pressure on you?
It was so much pressure. I didn't know anybody, first of all. I knew Zach Herr. He is the session bassist for Sleep On It. I knew him only by association because he toured with Small Talks, which is who I toured with. And he toured with him before I toured with him. So I had met him in passing like 2 or 3 times. Great guy. I mean, he's awesome, but I didn't like 100% know him, like a homie know him. Right. Like we were cool, but it's like I didn't really know him. I couldn't just hit him up and be like, yo, get me on this tour. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure.
And so I flew in, didn't know anybody on the tour, didn't know anybody in my camp except for Zach, and I had talked to Jake. He's the one who reached out and hired me. He's their guitarist, their rhythm guitarist. Oh, they switched from rhythm to leads, but he's their guitarist. So those were the only 2 that I would say somewhat knew. Mm-hmm. And other than that, I knew no one on the tour, no one in the camp, no one at all. So I get off the plane, I get to the venue, and I see there's already a line outside the door because I landed at like 4:00 in the afternoon and doors were at 6.
Wait, Where was the first show at? Oh, in Boston?
Yeah. So I've never been to Boston either. Yeah. First time in Boston. Had to Uber from the airport to the venue. Yeah. And I'm like, oh my God.
So just everything's new, just felt so uncomfortable.
Weird. It felt so like surreal to be in that position because that's kind of the position I've been working to get at. But then when I got there, I was like, oh my God, I don't know anybody. This is terrifying. What the fuck am I doing here? Like, I'm wrong. This shouldn't be me.
Did you like forget, like, how do I turn my camera on?
Oh my God. I was so stressed. I was like, there was a large portion of time where I was like, I shouldn't be here. There should be someone else here because like, that's just like self-doubt.
Like, why am I here? Like, why do I deserve this?
Yeah. Exactly. So that was going through my head, and then they got stuck in traffic and I actually beat them to the venue. But I didn't know anybody else. I didn't have a laminate. It was the first day. I didn't have any sort of credentials saying I'm supposed to be here. So I'm sitting outside the venue on my suitcase, like on the side of the road, looking like a homeless person, you know? And I'm just like, oh my God, I hope they walk by soon. I hope I see them drive by. I can follow the van, nothing.
For sure.
And then like 30 minutes, 40 minutes go by and I'm like, okay, they've got to be here by now. So I text Zach and I'm like, are you guys here yet? Like, where are you? I've been sitting on the corner of the street, sitting on my suitcase for like a half hour. It's Boston in September. It's kind of cold. Like, where are you guys at? I've called my aunt. I've called my boyfriend. Like, I've called the people that could consume the most time and what's going on. So then I finally found them and met up with them. And then it was like more awkwardness on my end because it's like, I don't know what to say to you guys. Yeah. Like, I listen to your music. I don't know you. I don't know any of these people here. But like in my mind, I'm like, holy shit, I listen to all these people. This is fucking insane. And so I was freaking out. And then it got time for me to shoot. And I remember like feeling my stomach like drop because I just felt so nervous. I was like, I'm actually doing this.
For
like,
sure.
I'm actually on this tour. I don't want to disappoint them. I don't want my first night show photos to absolutely suck and them regret hiring me. Like, there was all these thoughts rushing through my head and I felt so nervous for the first like 2 songs. And then after the 3rd song ended and they cleared the pit out, I was like, okay, like now I don't have to worry about anybody else in here. I can kind of breathe and do my own thing and not worry about it. And I got more settled in the further the tour went along. But in the beginning, I was just like, I hope no one knows that I'm falling apart right now. Like, I'm so nervous.
Yeah.
And that happens sometimes. Like when I do bigger shows, I always get nervous just because I'm like, oh my God, this is like a big opportunity. I don't want to fuck this up. And when I take a break and come back to shows, I always feel a little disoriented and loopy because I'm like, oh my God, it's been forever. Like, I'm rusty. You know what I mean? And same feeling when I like leave for tour and then I come back and the first show I shoot back at the Masquerade. I'm like, oh my God, I'm home.
It's good to be home.
So it's weird feelings for sure.
How big is like social media for what you do?
Oh.
Like, it's everything, right?
It's everything, and I hate it.
Yeah, for sure.
There's so much opportunity in social media. It is a great business tool, business platform if you utilize it to the best of your abilities. But apps like Instagram make it harder and harder to utilize because, I mean, their algorithm is absolute trash. My shit gets shoved to the bottom. I got over 2,000 followers, and I barely get 100 to 200 likes on posts some days.
Right.
So it's like, it's huge if it works. And when it doesn't work, it's frustrating.
Yeah.
Like, I'm posting and no one's seeing it.
Yeah.
My job revolves around people seeing it and going, she's a good photographer, we should hire her. Or she's good, I'll recommend her. You know?
And if no one's seeing it,
one's seeing it, then it's like, why is this so annoying?
So are there any other outlets that like you can use?
Yeah, well, I still use my Instagram. My Instagram's probably still, even as annoying as it is, probably still gets me the most opportunities. Right. Like, I book more shoots and more things like that via my like DMs and Instagram and things like that. I've been trying to get better about using Twitter and posting my photos to Twitter. Yeah. When I do post them to Twitter, they usually do something for me, you know, like they'll get a lot of retweets or a decent amount of likes or whatever. And then someone somewhere will see it. And then, you know, next time they come into town, I'll be like, hey, can I do this again? And they'll be like, yes, that works. Yeah. You know, so Twitter is a good source. Facebook is half decent. Like, it's kind of bigger on the band end of things than it is the photographer end of things. Like, it's really crucial for a band to have a good photography page or a good Facebook page. But for a photographer, it's not as big of it. At least I don't think so. Yeah. I know there are other like platforms that people share their things on. I personally don't use them, partially just because I honestly don't like social media. I just use it because I have to use it. So I don't really go out of my way looking for other platforms. Maybe that's a bad idea. Shame on me. But yeah, I pretty much just use like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat occasionally, like if I want to blast it on my story. But that's pretty much it. How important is it for like bands to like shout out the photographers? Oh, it's everything. It's everything. Like if you post, okay, the way that I always explain it to people in layman's terms, think of if you are at a restaurant or a bar or anywhere in public and they play a song that you love, but it's not registered to anything, so you can never find it. That is what posting a photo without credit is. Because if you post my photo one time and don't credit me, someone's going to go, oh, that's a cool photo. You know, maybe they'll have more from that photographer and eventually they'll get credited and we'll find them.
Right.
But that doesn't always happen. You know, sometimes you only get one photo set reposted. And if you're not tagged, they're going to be like, who the hell was that? Who took that? I love those photos. I want to hire them, but I don't know who took it. It's the same thing as hearing a song that you don't know the name of.
Yeah.
So it's like the same concept.
Dang.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So it sucks.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh my God, like there's my photo on this really big Instagram with all these followers and it's got, 1,000 likes on it already and no one knows I took that.
That hurts.
It's so annoying.
Yeah.
It's so annoying. And then people are like, oh, chill. It's not that big a deal. And I'm like, something as simple as you crediting me could decide whether or not I get a gig, whether or not I get hired.
Yeah.
Someone could be like, oh, I really, really love that photo. That's probably a really talented photographer. I would hire them if I knew who they were.
Yeah. It's like a dead end at that point.
It's a dead end. Yeah, exactly. So that's why us photographers are like, credit me.
Give me credit.
Credit me and don't put a filter over my photo because then it's the same thing. It's like putting some sort of distortion on a song. Same thing. Yeah. You're seeing it, but you're not seeing it in its true form. Right. You're seeing like another version of what I've already created. Yeah.
What are some big like pet peeves you have in terms of like shooting and stuff?
Pet peeves I have in terms of like social media, especially. One, don't ever screenshot and repost a photo. For the love of God.
Like, are you talking about like screenshotting and then cropping and then reposting?
Yes. It is the most excruciating thing to see because I click on it. I'm like, wow, this looks like it was taken on a Nokia flip phone from 2004.
Well, because Instagram compresses and then it recompresses after you screenshot it. So
when you screenshot, you're creating a compressed image.
Yeah.
And then Instagram recompresses that already compressed image. And it has about 4 pixels on it. And it looks like it was taken on a Nokia flip phone from 2004.
It's like toasting an already toasted bagel. It's like, why? This is horrible at this point.
Literally, that's exactly what it's like. So that is one of my biggest pet peeves because now you've just completely shit on the quality of the art that I just created for you. So that one is super frustrating. Same with filters. It's the same concept. Because, essentially what I do when I edit a photo is I put a filter that I have created onto that photo. Essentially, that's what it is. Yeah. I've manipulated the lights and I've edited the full photo to how I want it to look. And if I were to save those settings to what is called a preset, that is essentially a filter that I can put on any photo. So for me to filter it myself and then you to take it and put another filter over it, which the issue with that is you're not putting a filter over the raw. You're putting a filter over the already edited. So now it looks overly edited shit, first of all. Like,
it's like a backhand in the face.
Yeah, exactly. So it's already over edited. And then because I've exported that photo as a JPEG, it's no longer a raw. So the file is the colors are locked in on those new colors. And now you're editing a JPEG photo, not a raw photo. So you don't even have full potential to manipulate the colors like you would in a raw. So now you've burnt my bagel. You've just burnt the bagel.
Is far gone at this point.
You have burnt my bagel at this point. So that one is super annoying. And then the lack of credit is so frustrating to just not be credited or credited super discreetly. It's like, oh, you put me on your story, but you put me in white ink and you put me in the white photo of the white part of the photo. So no one knows I took that. Yeah. I get you don't want to cover up the image with a tag, but like put it somewhere visible.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah.
Please.
What, like, was there like a certain gap where like you learned something and then it just made your photography get like so much better? Was it like that one point?
Yeah. When I first started, like I said, I was shooting in JPEG, didn't know what I was doing. And then when I finally started doing, my camera in manual and doing everything like that on my own, that started making a really big difference. And then when I learned to shoot in RAW, that made a very large difference. But the biggest thing and probably the reason that I am so editing focused like I am now is when I switched and actually taught myself to use Lightroom instead of Photoshop. You can do pretty much a lot of the same things in Photoshop RAW, but Lightroom, the pieces just make more sense seeing it happen in Lightroom. and it clicks more, and I have more options, and it just does so much more for my photo editing it in Lightroom. So when I taught myself Lightroom and taught myself how the two communicate together and how I can switch back and forth between the two to use them like interchangeably, that made a huge difference.
And plus, like Lightroom, the layout was so easy to follow.
My God, it's so easy. You're just scrolling down. It's just all right there. You're just moving a little couple things over here and there, and you're done. You know, it's way easier to work, and like it just translates better. It makes more sense trying to use that. Photoshop Raw looks kind of similar, but it just doesn't have as much like options, I feel like. So learning Lightroom made a huge difference for sure. And then after that, I was like, okay, this is how I should have been doing this all along. Let me just pretend like I never took half these photos that I've already taken. Shout out Friends Fest when I met you, and those photos sucked.
Wait, is that when we met? Friends Fest?
I think so.
So that was
Friends Fest 2.
Friends Fest 2.
Right?
Yes.
17?
At the the New Masquerade. New Masquerade.
Yeah, it's one of the first shows at the New Masquerade. It was in Purgatory.
So what was your like transition into shooting shows and then meeting like our whole friend group, Blurry, 10th Row, Stay Here? Because like I remember meeting you at that show, but then I thought like I was like, where did Haley come from?
Literally. So that I came to be, shout out Julian Challa.
JC.
It's a big C.
The word that must not be spoken. C.
He came up to me because I was at the Assuming We Survive show shooting it. Yeah. That was like me trying to be a real photographer. Like I reached out to the band. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I reached out to Assuming We Survive, got to pass through them, things like that. So I was there. It was one of the first like legitimate shows where I was on a guest list. I had a photo pass. Yeah. Like I was legit just doing the thing. And I was shooting, everybody that night. At that point in time, I was just trying to build a portfolio. So I was shooting like openers. I was shooting everybody. And so I shot Stay Here. Awful photos. Sorry.
I remember I think you sent it to the group or something. Probably. And I saw the photos. I'm like, wow. She's made a lot of progress in like the year that I've known her, year and a half.
Yeah, those photos, bad.
Yeah.
So I met them there, and Julian was like, thanks, doing the Julian thing. Yeah. Like, thanks so much for shooting. Thanks for coming out. Like, that's so awesome. Like, if you want, we'll pay you. I'm pretty sure they gave me like $40, which in my mind, I'm like, I just got paid to take photos.
Yeah,
that's sick.
That's so cool.
And I remember us having a conversation that day about like touring, and he asked like what my goals were. And I was like, yeah, one day I would love to be touring and like doing this more often and this, that, and the other. So we had that show. And then I kind of stayed in touch with Julian, not a whole ton, but at the time, his girlfriend went to college with me. And so I went, I think, to like maybe one other Stay Here show or two other Stay Here shows. And then Friends Fest came up, and he was like, yo, do you want to shoot Friends Fest? And I was like, yeah, that'd be sick. And I came out, and that's when I kind of met you guys.
Yeah.
But then I don't know what it was. After Friends Fest, like, I didn't really talk to like Challa and Stay Here that much. And we all just kind of drifted. Nothing, no kind of like bad blood or anything. We just all kind of drifted. And I was like, okay, whatever, And then I don't remember how it like came to be. I know it has something to do with Julian one way or the other. Challa,
it always does.
It always has something to do with Julian. Like he probably hit me up and was like, we have a show. Can you please come out? It was something probably along those lines. And, I definitely think it was something along those lines. I think it was like the Drunken Unicorn. I think it was longer than a few months. I think it was about a year went by, and they played that. I want to say this was it. Maybe I'm wrong, but I want to say it was that show they opened up for Starbenders at the Drunken Unicorn. I want to say I came out to that and hung out with all of them because the dots are connecting. I think at this point in time, this was when they were booking that tour. This was last year. This was totally last year. They were booking that tour and they were trying to figure things out. And he was like wanting me to go with them and this, that, and the other. So I went to the show to shoot and like kind of get to know everybody. And so I did that. And then we hung out and I did that tour with them, and 10th Row was on a little bit of it. And then 10th Row was on like the first half of it. And then they were always talking about this damn Doinks group chat.
Wait, so Doinks, the OG Doinks is originally Stay Here in 10th Row? Or is it Stay Here in Hindsight?
I think it's Stay Here in Hindsight.
I think, yeah.
I can't quite remember.
For those of you listening, the Doinks we're referring to is like Stay Here. It started with Stay Here, and I think Hindsight, and then like Haley, and then Blurry, and
10th Row's in there.
10th Row.
Until Morning.
Yeah. Kenner.
Teddy Westside, because
Teddy Westside, yeah.
That's everybody that's in there.
I think so.
Yeah. And so then they were referring to that so heavily. And I was like, yo, this is ducked up. Why am I not in this group chat right now? Ducked up. Why am I not in this group chat? Yeah. I spent the whole tour convincing them to put me in the group chat. And then eventually, finally, I became the second girl in the Doinks group chat. Jess was the first. Yeah. Jess was first. I was the second. Shout out, Jess.
Shout out.
Girls unite. And so then I got added to that. And I remember thinking like, I feel like eventually we're all just going to be friends, but right now it's like I'm in here and I only know like 20% of the people in this group chat. So let's just see where this goes. And that group chat at that time was always popping, man. Last summer, that chat was always going off.
Dude,
like here we go off most days, but not as much, I feel like. So yeah, then they finally put me in that. And then I don't know, I guess it just kind of happened because I started, because at that point, now that I was in the group chat, I was knowing when all of these Uprising shows were going to be. I was knowing when everyone was going to be playing. And then I just kind of started going more and more and shooting like all the Doinks every time I would go. And then now we're all just one big old Doinks family.
Yeah. So like, what's your next step? Like you've done some good tours. Like you just want to keep doing bigger tours.
I want to try to keep doing that. You know, like I want to be growing every time I'm shooting and still feel like I'm learning every time I'm going out somewhere new. But I want to like work my way up to being on tours, even if it's just like tours of the same capacity of like the Broco tour. I want to get to a point where I'm consistently touring, a good chunk of the year and then eventually, continuing to progress and to work into bigger kind of levels and like do things like, one day would be sick as hell to do like an arena tour. That'd be sick. Like Kevin, my boyfriend, when he used to tour in Woe Is Me, they had a photographer named Josiah is his name. That was their photographer for Woe Is Me on like a lot in the beginning. And like now he tours with Shawn Mendes.
Wow.
Like things like that. You kind of can, like Ashley Osbourne's kind of the same thing. She started out as like a Warped Tour photographer and then she toured with Bring Me the Horizon and Blink-182.
So how do you get to that statue? Like, do you just keep...
I don't know.
Getting your name out there?
I guess so, honestly. Which, like, so far that's kind of seemed like that's how it's been, at least in my luck anyway. Like, the first big tour I did was the Can't Swim tour, and then the Broco tour I did after that, it was bigger than the first tour. Yeah. So, like, hopefully it just kind of keeps progressing and I can get to that point. But it's like I still don't really mind going out and doing smaller, like, DIY stuff because at the end of the day, like, that honestly, that stuff kind of is more fun.
Yeah.
Like, I love big shows. I love big crowds and good production makes my job easier. But like the energy and the like feeling of the room when you're at a DIY show, nothing feels like that besides a DIY show.
Yeah. Why do you think that is? Do you think it's the sense of community?
I think so. And honestly, when we were on the Broco tour, there was one particular date that felt like a Stay Here Uprising show to me. Yeah. Like it was absolutely insane. It was in Salt Lake City. It was like a 250 cap venue called the Loading Dock. And it's tiny. It's literally a semi-truck loading dock. It used to be a semi-truck loading dock. It's this like shotgun room that just goes straight back. It's got 2 bathrooms that everybody shares. And then the green room is like right off to the side. Yeah. And that show was nuts. Kids were stage diving, crowd surfing. They pulled Zach, the vocalist from Sleep On It. They pulled him into the crowd. Like those kids were nuts. Yeah. And they were like shameless in the best sort of way because they didn't care what anybody in that room thought about them. There was no egos. There was no drama. There was no judgment. Everyone was there for the same reason and everyone knew it and everyone embraced it. Mm-hmm. Whereas you go to other places like LA is always hit or miss because sometimes those kids just have a big ego and they don't want to rock out. Yeah. But that Salt Lake City show was just shameless in the best kind of way imaginable. And those kids were sick.
I feel like just smaller venues in general are always like, the energy's there. Yeah.
Because it feels more personal. There's less bullshit going on that nobody's worrying about. Yeah. There's not a bunch of production to worry about not breaking. There's not a barricade. There's not like any sort of weird egos like I'm too cool to dance right now. Like it's everyone's there for the music and everyone just like embraces that they're there for the music.
It's something about like the basements. When I think about a basement, I think about the Wonder Root venue in Atlanta. Like just something about that place. I don't know if it's, even the old Masquerade though, it had that.
It did.
And even that's not like a DIY venue.
It felt like it though.
It did.
Everything. It's because that venue was so freaking small. Everything was so close together. Purgatory, there was no barricade. Hell, there was a barricade, but it was literally an inch away from the stage, and Heaven was like maybe a half a foot away from the stage. So that sense of like connection was always there.
Yeah.
Like you always felt like who you were there to see was kind of at arm's reach because they were out and about, you know, they were hanging out in the crowd. They were playing on a stage that was less than a foot away from you. You know, it was always at reach, and you could interact with them more on a different level than just listening to their music in a room full of people also listening to their music. Okay,
so we can start wrapping this up, but do you have any like crazy tour stories?
Honestly, in San Francisco, I'll never forget. I was outside the venue and I was hanging out with the Trash Boat guys, and this guy. San Francisco's a weird place. Have you ever been?
I have. I went like last summer.
Cool city, weird place.
Yeah.
Weird place. A lot of like homeless population, a lot of drug problems, things like that. This man, we're just sitting outside.
Are you like downtown San Fran?
Yeah, we were downtown.
Okay.
And at least I think. I don't know, like
wherever the venue was.
Yeah, it was in the city of San Fran. Like we weren't in San Fran. We weren't in like Berkeley or anything like that. And so we were sitting by the RV because they were in an RV, and we were just standing outside of it, hanging out, talking. And this guy comes by. He's on a bike. And all of a sudden, like none of us are paying any attention. You know, we're in a circle talking to each other. And all of a sudden we hear, no. And we turn him over. And this man is like, everything's barred up at this time of night in San Francisco. So he's like, his bike has somehow like slingshotted off of him, and he's being dragged still by his legs. Like his bike is so far ahead of him, but his legs are like still on the pedals, and he's just holding on to the railings and just being drug across all this railing of like the barred up retail shops, and then he just plummets to the ground, and the bike like yeets out in front of him.
What?
And then and this at the same point in time, this girl that's dressed in like this tutu costume is like, oh hell, this part of town's so weird. And then she walks away, and this girl looks so like she's dressed so cute, like so strange. And I'm like, this part of town's weird, really, lady? Like, come on. And this guy is just plummeted to the ground, and we go to help him. We're like, hey, do you need help? And then he starts like screaming at us. He's like, no, I don't need your help. And then some woman comes from an alleyway, and she's like, oh, I'll help you. And he lets her like she just helps him up and puts his bike back, and they have a conversation. I guess they know each other somehow. What? And I'm like, what is happening? So that was kind of weird. Yeah. Now that I think about that, I had to give that some extra thought. That was kind of weird.
I hope that guy's okay.
I hope. Me too. I tried to help. He wouldn't let it happen.
Well, thank you so much for being the first guest. That's crazy.
Yeah, shout out episode 1.
Episode 1 of the I don't know.
Of the podcast.
Name TBA. But do you have like
rough draft?
Yeah, rough draft. Do you want to like shout out your social medias where people can find you?
Yes. Follow me. All of my social medias I have Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. All of them are at HNM Creative. It's my initials. My name is Haley Nicole Mewborn. So HNM Creative.
Nice.
Yep.
Cool.
That me. It me.
All right. Well, thanks again. And I guess I'll see you at the next show or something.
Yeah. When is the next
show? I don't know.
Bogog?
Bogog. What is that?
Big Gig.
Oh. Yeah, I guess. Like
shout out Big Gig. If you're listening to this podcast and you're not at the Big Gig, that is whack.
Yeah. I mean,
MCP coming back enough. Like that's enough.
Yeah. For sure. And
that's right after the Stay Here album comes out.
Bliss.
And Bliss is headlining that.
The Dallas Cowboys.
The Dallas Cowboys are going to be there. The whole team.
The Falcons are opening that show too.
The Falcons, they're opening for sure. They definitely aren't headlining.
Dude, they're the pre-opener.
They're playing 10 minutes before doors.
Yeah. And then they're going to let people inside.
Yeah, they're the walk-in music. Oh, that's fun. Oh man, that's sad.